Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar in celebration of International Women's Day, how Ciphr supports women in the workplace and how you can too. I'm thrilled to be joined by a panel of women from our team here at Ciphr. First we've got Amy, who's our internal comms lead. Hi Amy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Very good. And we've also got Meg, who's our associate instructional designer. Meg, welcome.
Hi everybody.
And we've got Lauren, who's our digital design lead. Welcome, Lauren.
Hello.
And rounding out our panel is Anne, who is our head of diversity here at Ciphr. You might have seen her on some other recent DE and IB themed webinars. Welcome, Anne. It's great to have you with us again.
Hi everybody. Nice to be here.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Here's a look at our agenda. We'll share some information about Ciphr just in case you haven't come across us before. Then we'll have a look at the theme for International Women's Day 2025 before I hand over to our panel to share all about Ciphrs, which is the women's support group that we have here at Ciphr. We'll also discuss the pros and cons of individual support networks and how to create a support group for women at your organisation using some of the lessons that we've learned here to help you out. And there'll also be time at the end for our Q&A, which Anne will join as well, if there's specific questions around the work that we're doing or about DEIB strategies more generally. Do get involved, use the chat and say hi and share your views and comments. You can also send in questions using the Q&A option. And just to get you started, I'm just going to share a poll. Does your organisation have initiatives specifically aimed at supporting women? So there's a few options in there. Do you have policies and programmes in place? Yes, you have some activities in place but could do more. No, but you're looking to introduce them, or perhaps no, there's very little focus on that. So have a think about that and we'll revisit those findings in a moment. If you haven't come across Ciphr together at Ciphr before, here's a look at what we do. We offer a range of solutions and software that covers every stage of the employee lifecycle, right from recruitment and onboarding through to essential HR software, cloud-based real-time payroll software and payroll bureau option, as well as a flexible benefits platform, e-learning content that can be off the shelf or bespoke, and D&IB consultancy, which is led by Anne. We won't go into any of those solutions today. If you want to find out more, you can visit our website at ciphr.com, or you can email us at info@ciphr.com, and we will be glad to help you out. So just looking at the poll that I shared there, does your organisation have initiatives specifically aimed at women? And oh, there we go. I'm sorry, I just lost the results. So 50% of you said that yes, you do, but you could be doing more. 20% of you said no, but you're looking to introduce them, and about 23% said no, and there's little focus on this. So hopefully this webinar will give you a good starting point. And for those of you joining us live, we have a free trial of our micro-learning Gender Equality at Work course. That's one of the courses that are provided as part of our catalogue from our e-learning division. If you'd like to claim a free trial, just hit the link that's on your screen now, and we will follow up with you afterwards. So looking at the theme for International Women's Day 2025, and it's all about Accelerate Action, which is defined as a worldwide call to acknowledge strategies, resources and activities that positively impact women's advancement and to support and elevate their implementation. The organisers of International Women's Day note that significant barriers to gender equality remain, yet with the right action and support, positive progress can be made for women everywhere. So as part of that theme, that's why we're sharing what we do here. So we're working to accelerate action internally here, but also by sharing the challenges we faced and how we've tried to overcome them. We're hoping that we can inspire other organisations to accelerate action in support of Women's Day and women throughout the year. Okay, with all of that introduction, I'm going to hand over to Meg and Lauren to start telling us all about Ciphr's, which is our women's network here. Thank you.
Oh, you're on mute, Meg.
Sorry, thank you. I knew that I was going to have some kind of technical difficulty this morning. So yeah, to kick off, I guess I'll start by introducing what Ciphr is. So Ciphr is our women's community at Ciphr. It really lended itself to that amazing wordplay for the name. It's a supportive community. It's also a valuable resource as a safe and welcoming space for the women in our business to open up about personal and relatable topics. It's also a social interaction opportunity for people across the business, across different departments. So, for example, Lauren and I are in different teams within the business, but we've done a lot of work together and got to know each other really well through this. So that's another great thing about this group, that it's done that for other people as well. So Ciphr is a knowledgeable space for us. So we learn from each other, we share resources and information to our community, and our community share information between themselves. They share information to us. It's a really great, knowledgeable space. We operate monthly via video call sessions on Teams, and we have regular comms, which we will talk about later in the session, but that's just a little bit of an introduction. And since the beginning, the community has continued to grow for us, and it's evolved largely out of the feedback and the responses that we've seen from the people within it. Again, we're going to talk about that further as we go through the session, but that was just a nice introduction to who we are. And Lauren's now going to talk about what inspired her to create it.
Yeah, so back in October 2023, a menopause chat was created because of Menopause Awareness Month. And it started off really strong, but over time, because there wasn't anyone leading the group, it began to lose traction. And around this time, I personally was going through a lot of my own health issues. So I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, so PCOS for short, which has resulted in me having to go through a lot of different medical procedures and basically tackling a healthcare system that really wasn't designed for women or supports women. I'd also learnt of some instances of violence against women that was very close to home for me. And my own experiences, coupled with stories you hear in the news, it just lit a fire in me, and I knew I wanted to do something about it. It came up in a conversation with my manager, and we spoke about the menopause chat and how I wanted something that could be a bit more broad, so tackle more issues that can relate to all the women in the business. And she also knew of someone at the time that was also interested in setting up something like that. So we both linked up together, and so Ciphr was born. Later, when that person that I started Ciphr with left the business, Meg joined me as a co-host, and she's been an absolute joy to work with on Ciphr, and I feel like we've really gone from strength to strength. Oh, we've lost the...
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Sorry. I have everything lined up, and then I go to click it and it doesn't click what I want to click initially, but sorry. Yeah. So obviously when we're talking about Ciphr, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what topics we cover in the sessions and how we choose them. So initially the session started as simply open conversation. So people could join the call, talk about anything that they want to talk about, whether it was something that was on their mind, something that happened over the weekend, or just something else that they were passionate about. So that was just kind of how it started. And naturally, a lot of those conversations grew, more people joined, and it was really nice to see. And then we began to make an active effort to kind of position a topic. So we asked the community what they wanted to talk about, and we tended to do this through polls. So we'd send polls out to the community. And the most popular topics that came out of those polls were women's health, safety, and women in the workplace, which we'll also talk about a little bit more when we talk about the ones that have had the biggest impact, should I say. Sometimes the topics are structured around a particular theme. So sometimes we've done something specifically based on an awareness month. So for example, our session lined up with Stress Awareness Week. So we made sure that session was all about stress, or it can be based on an event. So for example, the safety event, which Lauren is going to talk about a little later, was happened as a result of something that happened to somebody within our business. And we also, between us, Lauren and I open up largely about ourselves, which has helped to break the ice. So Lauren's just mentioned her own health journey, and I've also had my own women's health issues over the years. So that's always a good thing to kind of kickstart the conversation. Sometimes it's helpful to have somebody, be brave and stand up and talk, and then that encourages other people to do that as well. So it's really possible. It's really positive that happens. and it helps to break the ice. We encourage the community to open up if they feel comfortable, and we largely want what we talk about to be driven by the community. We want people to talk about things that are meaningful to them or something that's going to impact them in a positive way, and that is why we tend to, you know, choose those things that the community recommends, and then they tend to have the greatest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what has had the biggest impact for me, as Meg mentioned, we had a session about safety, which has actually resulted in real change in the business, which has been fantastic. And as Meg mentioned, it's started when one of our colleagues had been followed from her hotel to the office, which understandably spooked her. And so it got brought to the community, and we was like, okay, let's do a session on it. So we spoke about our own experiences, and we spoke about what women's safety in general meant to us and how we feel about that. But then we also wanted to promote safety at Ciphr as well. So now we have some personal alarms that people can use. We've collected a bunch of different resources. So, for example, there's the national one of Strut Safe. There's also a safety app that's been specifically designed for Reading, where our office is based. And we've also created a WhatsApp group as well, so that we can check in with each other or support each other if we're feeling a bit unsafe when traveling alone. And this is something that everyone in the business can use. It's not just for us within Ciphr, but for everybody in the business, which has been absolutely amazing, and probably would not have happened had we not had this conversation in Ciphr.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a really impactful session, and I think we learned a lot, and then all of that one. Another really was our women in leadership speaker session, where we were very kindly joined by our COO Claire Williams, who came on, and she decided to give a talk about her experience and working up through her career, what she's done to become, you know, a board member, a female board member at quite a young age. So it was really inspiring to hear her talk about that. And it was one of the most impactful sessions because we had one of the most, you know, the highest numbers of attendees for that session. So a lot of people were interested. There was people that purposefully came in person to that session. So it was a hybrid one. People could join online or join in person. And there was a really good response in both areas there. People wanted the recordings of the session, which, you know, is the first time that's ever really happened for us. I mean, obviously it's our first speaker session as well. But it was great that people wanted or felt that there was enough takeaways that they'd want to go back to that. And we're actually running a second session with Claire on the top tips, which is going to be a recorded session. So that means that people can access that information again. There was a lot of positive feedback as well from that session. We found that a lot of people were really inspired and really enjoyed it, and just really enjoyed the new kind of format that we take. And so obviously it was our first speaker session. It's not the way that we normally do things, but it was something that we were excited about for a while, and it was great that it went so well, and we hope to do more of those in the future off the back of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for me, the most impactful thing has been talking about some of our health struggles. I think what we found is everyone seems to have them, and there's nothing more kind of powerful, but also cathartic to realize you're not the only one who's, you know, had difficulties maybe getting a diagnosis or the same kind of pushbacks as other people. And what's really lovely is we can kind of take from it what we want. Some people just have a bit of a vent, and, you know, share some stuff that you can tell is really, yeah, I guess cathartic. It's tough sometimes to listen to, but we're all there supporting each other. And sometimes it's just a vent. Sometimes it's, here's an issue I'm facing, or here's something going on. What can I do? And people can come along and give tips and share their own experiences. And it's just, yeah, it's really powerful knowing you're not alone, and that you have people going through the same thing around you. And I'm not the only one who found the same thing. So one of our other members also shared that talking about mental health, hearing others' tips and experiences have been really helpful. And she said that it's such a supportive and reassuring space. And yeah, I couldn't agree with her more. That's exactly what Ciphr is.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk a little bit about what makes Cipher's safe and inclusive and how we actually make sure it stays that way. So firstly, we wanted to make sure that the way that we conducted things was with the community of women in mind. So when we had our first session, we asked the group what they wanted. So we agreed on things like confidentiality, with the understanding that we trust each other not to share anything discussed in the group outside of the group. We were also initially open to men joining the group, but when we put that to the community, whether they were happy with that, they actually felt like they would be more able to open up if men weren't present. So we honoured that and we decided to make it a closed group. Having said that, we are working on setting up more groups. So hopefully we can set up a men's group, and definitely something in the future we'd like to do is to do a collaboration with that. And learn from each other. So do it in a more planned way so that people know what they're going into when they go to that group. Regarding the sessions themselves, as Meg's already mentioned a little bit already, they are virtual, but they're also optional, and we don't force anyone to contribute unless they're comfortable to do so. People can keep their cameras off and they can mute their mics. So there's just no pressure whatsoever from us. And when we did our speaker session last month, we made it virtual and in person, so it was hybrid, to give people the freedom to join how they wished. And when we did our first in-person only session, this again was optional, but it was also in addition to our usual virtual session, which meant that for those that weren't comfortable to join us in person or just plainly weren't able to do so, they could still get the benefit of the usual virtual meeting without having to sacrifice that for 1 month. Another thing is about the communication between those sessions. So we do everything through Viva Engage, and we have a Cipher's community within Viva Engage, which is a closed group. So it means that only those that have been invited can see and respond to the content. And again, that just makes sure that the communication outside of those meetings is also confidential. In terms of the inclusive side of things, one thing that we were a little bit concerned about was for those that are non-binary and whether they would feel comfortable to join if they actually wanted to, especially seeing as we have a pronoun in our group name. But to combat that, Meg and I have always put ourselves out there as much as possible to encourage people to reach out and ask us questions, or if they want to join, they can ask us first and we can have that conversation at that time. Finally, sometimes our sessions can get very emotional. I think Amy just sort of touched on that a little bit just now. But thankfully, we do have a really lovely and supportive community. Additional to that, though, Meg and I are mental health first aiders, and we have encouraged people to reach out to us if they need to after a session. And we have been known to touch base as well with a member who may have particularly struggled through a particular session, just to make sure that they're okay and if they need anything from us. So there's lots of different ways that we try to make it nice and safe and as inclusive as possible. And this is another quote from one of the members of the Cipher's community. And she says that she feels that being part of the community makes her feel less alone, which is really, really lovely.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice seeing all that positive feedback. Again, just, you know, people are proud to be part of the community and we're really proud to run it. So it's really nice that we get feedback like that. Obviously, creating a group of this kind, if you have experience in this or if you don't, there will be challenges along the way. So I thought I'd dive into the challenges that we faced in creating the group and sustaining it, but obviously also how we've overcome those challenges. So obviously, as we've mentioned, we are predominantly virtual. So then access to the sessions is a bit of a challenge. So sometimes people can't attend due to regular meetings or schedule clashes, or people just generally being too busy to join. We don't expect everybody to always be able to take an hour out of their day to join us. So that is sometimes a challenge. And obviously, because of the confidentiality, we don't record the sessions. So there isn't a way for those people that do miss it live to catch up So we try to, we've overcome that, or we try to continuously overcome it by keeping the community actively engaged outside of the sessions, so that all the members of the community still feel very embraced, they feel very a part of what we're doing, very up to date. If there's any information that comes out of a session, it will be shared in the Viva Engage group that Lauren just mentioned. So for example, in the one last week, there was a specific shout out to a benefit that we have at the company that not everybody will be aware of, and how one lady had used it for like a health screening, and how she'd used the benefit. And it was kind of put into the group afterwards. So all the people that didn't join the session still have the knowledge of that, still got a little bit of information of what we talked about without revealing any details. But it's just a way to make sure everybody is still in the loop. And we do this with regular communications on Viva Engage. So obviously also talking about Viva Engage communications. So now we are blessed with Viva Engage. We can track the engagement and the impressions on each post that we put out there. Prior to that, when we were just working on Teams, it was really difficult to gauge what people were enjoying, or what people were, whether people are actually reading or even seeing the content that we were putting out there. So the move over to Viva Engage has been a massive help in overcoming that challenge. And now we can respond posts to kind of, people like, this is what people respond to, this is what people engage with the most. So we kind of tailor our comms around that now, which is really helpful. Another challenge is obviously finding time amongst the day job. Lauren and I are very busy, and it is always great to take time out to do some Ciphrs work, but sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. So sometimes the planning takes a little bit of a backseat and everything comes together a little bit more chaotically, but it still works. We still, it's really good. Sometimes we do have the time to put slides together, sometimes we don't, but luckily our community, there is no expectation there really, because our sessions are so different each time. So we kind of, go with the flow sometimes, and sometimes there is a little bit more planning that goes into it, but it does really depend on how we're doing and what we're doing. Another challenge
comes across flawlessly every time.
Yeah, it does. And I must admit, it really does come across flawlessly. I don't think anybody would ever notice the days when we come in and we don't really know what we're doing until 5 seconds before it starts. But yeah, they're definitely, I think we do it off very well. I've kind of exposed us there a little bit, but yeah, I think we're doing all right. I think another challenge that a lot of people might face when they are setting up a group like this within their organization is buy-in from executive leadership levels. So we're very lucky ourselves within Ciphr that we have had exec buy-in with our COO, as mentioned, Claire before. She's been very supportive of the community. She's attended the sessions, but she's also led the speaker session. And I think a lot of people might have to deal with the fact that they might have to prove that the group works or prove the value of the community. And luckily we're not in that position. We don't have to prove, what the group has done, or there's not necessarily any targets we have to maintain or anything like that. We're very lucky in that sense. But a good thing to note is that in our latest engagement survey within the company, the women responded that they feel more supported than men across the business. And we strongly believe that our Ciphr's community may have contributed to this. So that I think that is a good sign to us that it's working, that, that the women in the community are feeling supported. They do feel like there's somebody there for them. And I hope that, that is because of our group. Budget as well, I think, is a big thing. I think a lot of people expect to go into these groups needing to have a budget, or, needing funding in a sense, but we don't actually operate with a budget. So we're quite a good example of how possible it is to start small, to create and nurture a community within the workplace without having to fund it in any way. So we've kind of sustained the group with evolution in that sense. So we've grown the sessions. We've gone from just regular Teams calls to themed sessions to in-person sessions to hybrid sessions. We're constantly growing the group, and I think that is one way that we've really sustained it without having to bring in a budget, or without having to make a lot of expenses or change the format in a drastic way for a lot of people. So we've also sustained it through changing our approach to content. As I mentioned, we've changed the way that we engage people. We've done it in a way that seems to work best for them, but we largely sustain our group by relying on the input from the community. It is all about what they want to see, what they want to listen, what they want to talk about. And I think that at the core of it is basically what Ciphr for us is all about. And I've just changed the slide over.
There we go.
Yeah, so I think the biggest benefit, we've kind of already touched on this, and so have a lot of the quotes, but it's that safe space. It's the community that Meg and Lauren have really built here. Everyone is so supportive. You don't feel like there's a stupid question or a stupid topic to come to the session with. And because it's kind of now got this Ciphr Engaged community, it's not just a call once a month. We can reach out with anything at any time. We can put a post in that group, and we have a community of people who are there and willing to listen and help and genuinely care about each other. So I'm relatively new to Ciphr. I joined just over 6 months ago. And I think within my first week, I joined a Ciphr session, and it was such a great way to be introduced to people across the business. And a great way to feel less alone when you first start and you're kind of thrown in the deep end and you've got so much to take in. Just having this community that had no pressure to come along with anything really, just to bring yourself and get engaged as much or as little as you like. And yeah, I think my first session was about celebrating women and really name a better way to join a business and just have this session where everyone's loving each other and sharing all the great people who are doing fantastic work. And just, yeah, it was just a brilliant way to be introduced to Ciphr and Ciphr's. And I've never had a support group like this in any other business where it's so focused on the community. It's not action driven, but we do, make change, as Lauren said earlier, but there's no pressure for it to be, you come to the session, you come out with 10 things that you need to go away and do. You have as much or as little as you need from it or as you want from it. And it's just, yeah, such a brilliant community that have come together. There's not, it couldn't be any better in my opinion. It's just a fantastic group.
Oh, thank you, Amy. I mean, that celebrating women session was really, really lovely. We asked just all the women in the business to nominate someone that they thought was a Ciphr heroine. And it was just so lovely just seeing women champion other women in the business, and just there were so many lovely comments. And we did something as well afterwards where we sent emails to all the people that had been given a nomination with the comments that were said and things like that as well, which was just, it was so lovely. And I know it did make some of their days. So yeah, that was a really nice session.
Yeah, it was really lovely. And again, it's one of those things that I think every 5 minutes, Lauren and I were checking in with each other saying, how nice is this? This is so lovely. And I think that's a real big, benefit for us, because Lauren and I get so much out of running the group as well as obviously participating in it. And I think that strong sense of community that Amy has just mentioned as well. This is another on the screen. You can see another lovely testimonial from somebody in our community, talking about how that sense of community is one of the biggest, one of their favorite things. It's one of my favorite things. And I think there is such an openness and a respect and an inclusive feeling between everybody within the group during every single session. And it is definitely that space where you can feel safe, heard, and not judged. And again, as mentioned earlier, there is no expectation for people to contribute to these sessions. We don't pressure anybody to speak. And so when they do, it's, really kind of powerful, and it's really nice that they feel comfortable enough to open up. And it's one of those things that after every session, when somebody is opened up about something, you can't not be in awe of them for obviously talking about these things. I know especially some of the topics we cover can be quite emotional, can be quite difficult. So when people are coming forward with their own experiences or their own thoughts on a topic, it's really brave. And I think that is something that we really treasure from our community. And I think it's not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we have done a really good job in creating that kind of safe space and that kind of community sense that people feel like, feel really good to be a part of it, which is always really, really nice.
I think it's fine to pat ourselves on the back now. So I believe Amy now is going to take us through some of the pros and cons of individual support networks.
Lovely intro, Lauren, thank you.
Right.
So I'll try not to talk about these in too much detail, but we'll go with pros first, because these are always positive groups. It's great to have these on offer for people to dip in and out of. So it creates that safe space. It's a network for employees to reach out to. It connects people across the business. It's not kind of limited to just the team. So if you have an issue with silos, it's a great, easy way to start breaking those down and making relationships across the business. And it builds a community of really engaged individuals. So I would say Ciphr's is probably one of our most active Viva engaged communities. A lot thanks to Lauren and Meg always starting those conversations. But because we've got that strong team meeting sitting behind it, people are really engaged just in general. The people who are positive in the Viva Engage Ciphr's chat are engaging on things in other places as well. So we're seeing them much more engaged with the business in general. And the groups can impact the business. So we can push forward actual change and inform policies, products, marketing. I've been in places before where we've kind of been a second set of eyes on policies, or taken the lead on maybe getting a certain accreditation and looking into what's possible for the business. And it makes it super clear that DEIB is really valued where we work. So it's a really simple way to make it clear that it's not just words on your careers site or that you say at the all hands meetings. It's something we genuinely believe in. And it's super impactful. There's really valuable conversations that you can have with your employees. You get fantastic feedback, and it's a great sounding board. You know, maybe we have a project coming up, and we want to get people's opinions on, is this inclusive? Have we maybe missed out a group of people here that we've not thought about? So it's a great way to kind of, get that feedback opportunity. And I've said it already, but you can connect across teams. It's a great way to get people involved without adding something extra to their plate. But there are some cons. So sometimes individual support networks can feel limiting. So like Lauren said, this is Ciphr's. We don't have a his currently, Ciphr his. So where do the men go when they want these conversations? But also, where would someone who's non-binary go? So it can make some people feel excluded, which obviously isn't the aim of the group. So you do have to kind of think carefully how you'll kind of go about that. And it really does take that protected time for these groups to work, and that can be tricky. Lauren and Meg put in a crazy amount of work into making this look as seamless as it is. And I mean, they do a fantastic job, but there's so much that goes into putting all of that in place and making sure that we have this super fantastic group that we can dip in and out of. And you really need to have a clear purpose. So if there's a disconnect between what the business expects and what the group expects, then you can have a session that people come out of feeling negative rather than feeling super empowered and positive. So, for example, you might have a group where they think they're coming together to maybe inform on policies and push change through the business, but the business thinks it's going to be more of a conversation kind of support network rather than actually pushing change. Then you'll kind of have that tension between the two parties, and you definitely want to make that clear right when you start, like Lauren and Meg did, of what is this group and what do we want out of it. And then we risk having siloed conversations. So because we have these amazing conversations in Ciphr's, some of it that comes out of it would be really powerful for the rest of the business to know. We need to make sure that those conversations get out of that group, and it can happen in any kind of group like this. Those conversations are fantastic, but how do we get them back out to the wider business without, maybe going back on, not confidentiality, I suppose, or not necessarily going back on it, but maybe breaching some of that. So it's really about thinking, how does that get back out again, and making sure that those conversations don't just take place, in a one and done conversation with just that group of people. How do we then action it and make it, continue to go forward? And then finally, Meg kind of touched on this, but it's navigating hybrid working and relying on those engagement in digital channels. Some people just want to come to work, do a good job and go home. And groups like this rely on people getting engaged kind of in a more meaningful way, kind of going above and beyond what their job description says and, taking time out, right? And if the business doesn't have room for that, and if the individual doesn't have room for that, then groups like this will kind of flounder, because you know, Lauren and Meg need people to turn up and be able to talk. Otherwise the conversations won't be as powerful and brilliant as they are now. So really trying to make those work for the business you're in is another challenge that you've got to get right when you kick off. Otherwise it kind of, falters right out of the starting blocks. And I think Lauren and Meg are going to take us through some guidance on how to create a support group for women.
Thank you for that intro, Amy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so to start with, we thought we'd talk about the prep. So as I mentioned before, when we had that menopause chat, when things just started, it started off strong, petered out because there was no one really driving that group forward. So with that in mind, we feel that finding a couple of people at least that are willing to lead the group is essential to keep that momentum going. Having more than one person leading the group, we think really helps because you can bounce ideas off of each other. But not only that, but you can share the workload too. So when it comes to putting yourself up to something like this, it can lead to that sort of crisis of confidence of sort of thinking, what right do I have to do this? Am I experienced enough to run a group? I know I personally was very nervous in the first session as I'd never done anything like that before. However, over time, I've built up my confidence, I've made myself more visible in the business, and my public speaking skills has grown dramatically. I definitely wouldn't be doing this right now if it wasn't for Ciphr's. I think essentially the thing you need to think to yourself is, are you really passionate about the support network that you want to build? And if so, then you absolutely have the right to lead it. And then it does also then give you those additional benefits that when I was starting to put it all together, I didn't even think of at the time, but can definitely see some of those benefits for my own personal development, as well as also seeing the development in the business as well around supporting women, which has been absolutely amazing. As we've already mentioned a little bit before about getting buy-in from senior leadership, it's essential. They can advocate for the group and they can help you drive some real change. We are so lucky to have Claire Williams on our side, our Chief Operations Officer. She's fantastic. She's a big champion for women in the business, and she's been so supportive throughout the whole process. As Meg mentioned, she's been coming to the sessions that she can when she's got a little bit of space in her diary. But then also when we were actually putting the group together, we met with her and we pitched the idea, and she was immediately on board. She was really excited and she was ready to advocate for the group and promote it too. And it just made the process so much easier knowing that you had someone from the executive leadership team behind you. So trying to get that buy-in, explaining what you feel the benefits could be, I think can really help in trying to get that buy-in from senior leadership. Then finally, you've got to think about what you actually want for the group. So what kind of topics do you want to tackle? How often do you want to meet? Do you even want to meet at all? Would you prefer it to be a digital forum for people to connect? If you're not sure, put it out to the organisation, see what they want to do, see what they would want for a group, and then just work with them to then hone in on what you want that support network to actually be.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think I'm very lucky that Lauren kickstarted this group and, felt passionate enough about doing it. And obviously it was a real pleasure that I then had the opportunity to join and do this with her. And it's been a real thing. I know Lauren's mentioned that it's developed her skills. It's also developed my confidence. I might be floundering a little bit on this webinar, but my kind of confidence, and also again that kind of confidence within the business and having these conversations with people that I wouldn't normally interact with, it's been a real kind of door opener for me in a lot of ways. I guess on the other side of things, aside from prep, it's also advertising. So how do people know about the group and know about what we're doing? So for us, we have a Sean's Cafe weekly business update, which is an all company call with our CEO. And whenever there's a Ciphr session upcoming that week, we will always make sure that it is shouted out on there so people have awareness. Early on, I actually was on Sean's Cafe, our all company call, and I did a little bit of a session about what Ciphr's is. So I went in a little bit more depth about what it is, what it meant, what attendees can expect. And that was a way that it kind of informed not only the women of the business, but the whole business about what we were doing. within this group, which I think was a really good way to get everybody kind of, to get people more involved, or to get people just having that awareness, because obviously it is very women centric, but it's important that the men in our business also know that, we do have this space, and hopefully in the future there will be a Ciphr or a male group set up, because I do think that they would equally benefit in the way that we have. So that's always a good way to get the message out there about when it's happening. We also do regular reminders on Viva Engage. We've spoken a lot about that, but it is a real integral part to our group. So there are always reminders that sessions are coming up. And we also have a monthly calendar that everybody across the business can access, and it'll say on there when the sessions are happening. And we make sure that it's always on there, so everybody always knows and can try and plan to join. Again, things happen, and if they can't join, it's unfortunate, but we're all busy, and so it's just a good way to make sure that if people know and they've got a bit of time free, that they can join when it's happening. Also, when anybody new joins the business, we add them to the Teams invite and we send them an email, so we they're kind of immediately informed on what the group is, what this kind of random thing that's appeared in their diary is. So straight away, so then there's that awareness from the get-go. Obviously, people do have the choice to decline the invite and to decline joining the community. It hasn't happened yet, but it is always, something that we're prepared for. We understand that not everybody wants to be engaged in this way. So yeah, that's what we do to advertise our group.
Absolutely. So then, looking at the first session, so we started off about sort of giving an introduction to the group of what we thought Ciphr was, and just a way to kind of initially set up those expectations. But then, as we've mentioned earlier, we put it to the group to guide us on actually how we wanted the sessions to be conducted. So that's when we asked, do you want men to join the group? We agreed on things like confidentiality and how we actually wanted each session to go. So did we want it to focus on a specific topic? Did we want to just keep it very general and just a bit of a free-for-all of whatever's on anyone's mind? Or do we just want it to be a little bit of both? So have a specific topic for sort of the first half, and then for the second half, then have it be the free-for-all. And we did kind of decide to go for the little bit of both, but what's quite interesting is that with most of the topics, it doesn't do that. It ends up just taking up the whole session, which is quite interesting, but we do have that freedom if things, say, naturally change into something else. We also agreed to do things like polls so that we could then allow the community to decide what topics we should cover as well. And we also use those polls when we are trying to check in with everyone in the community. So ever since that first session, we've checked in every now and again, sort of said, is there anything more that you want from Ciphr? And we did have someone that pitched the idea of the speaker sessions. And we put that out to everyone when we said, is this something that you'd be interested in? And it was unanimously supported. So we've started to implement that. And doing all of these things, especially from the very first session, shows that you're doing everything with the community in mind, and it gives you a great footing to develop that trust within the community itself, because then people know that they're being heard from the absolute get-go. It's not something that we've just started thinking, oh, let's actually involve the community later down the line. We did it from the very first session.
Yeah, and I think it's been that kind of trust, I think, has really helped us to grow. And I think that, going on to development and what we've done, I've kind of touched on a couple of these things already. So obviously there's the advertising that I've just mentioned. There's the Viva Engage community and the internal comms. We've also tied in with internal comms with Amy through to make sure that everything matches what we're trying to do as a business as well as a community. So that's always been really helpful. We also do a lot of kind of comms around awareness days, which is really helpful. It makes it that really kind of educational element. I know that Lauren and I learn a lot when we're putting these, the content together. So that's always really fun to do. And then obviously Lauren's just mentioned the speaker sessions, the virtual in-person. We've had the in-person sessions, but also I think our group has created a lot of opportunities for the company to further support employees. So, for example, last week it was announced that Lauren and I are the endometriosis champions for Ciphr. So we've recently joined the endometriosis friendly employer scheme with the charity Endometriosis UK. So that's a great initiative that the company is at the forefront of now. And we're able to kind of use our group to raise the awareness of the condition. But again, it's not group exclusive. That's going to be a company-wide effort that everybody's going to be involved in. But I think Lauren and I are aware that there's a lot that we can do with the group to help us get there, to help raise that awareness for everybody else. Also, a lot of us are mental health first aiders across the business. So that's really handy. Lauren and I are one. And Amy, I, and another employee also recently took part in infant loss training, pregnancy and infant loss practitioner training, which again is a very difficult topic, but it's great to have people with the knowledge and support networks and resources available if anybody needs that. I think that's also another way that we're able to support our community in that way. And I think, we very much approach this as something more than just a meeting once a month. It's something that we're really making a positive change to people and to the business. And obviously we're very focused on the people within our business. And I think that this group has done wonders for us. And I think it's done wonders for other people as well, but it's helping us make a, positive change on a grand scale, which I think is really positive. And we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep evolving. We're going to keep growing, see what comes out of it. But we've already made so much progress in what feels like quite a short amount of time. So yeah, it feels like, infinite possibilities for us, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not even a year old yet, Ciphr, and we've already achieved all of this already and seen so much growth and development. So it's very exciting, and definitely intrigued to see what comes next.
I think we're heading to Q&A now. Sorry, go on, Catherine.
I was pressing too many buttons there and not getting them all in the right order. So thank you, Meg, Lauren, and Amy, for sharing your experiences of participating in and leading in Ciphrs. It was fascinating to hear how it's evolved from just kind of like a one-off conversation to something that now is a fixture in the calendar and also in the comms channel for us. Amy's been instrumental in that, in relaunching our Viva Engage platform, which we'd be happy to share information about that at a future webinar. I'm just throwing you in it there, Amy, but I think that probably is on the horizon to talk about how you've led on changing internal comms, because that's something that we have historically struggled with. I think even pre-pandemic, when we were sort of working in the office, we might have all been together, but maybe not connected very well, and definitely working hybrid, that is tricky. So I know for me, being a member of Ciphr's has definitely brought me in to talk to people I wouldn't normally deal with in different teams in the business, which is always valuable when you're trying to get things done, is knowing more people. If you have questions for our panel or for Anne, our head of diversity, she's here if you want some expert opinions on DIB, we're happy to take them now. I know we've covered a lot of information here. So thank you, Debbie, for your question. So you asked, do you have any other employee representative groups?
So currently we don't, but it is in our goals this year to at least create another 2 more. That's something that myself and Meg are particularly going to lead on, because we've created Ciphr's and we've got the knowledge of how we've done that and how we've developed it. So we want to try and use that to help other groups become established within Ciphr. So we are looking at potentially doing male version of our group, so a Ciphr's. We've also talked about things like neurodiversity, parents groups, LGBT plus. There's lots of different things that we can do, and so that's definitely something that we're planning to do this year.
Great, thanks, Debbie, for your question. If you have any other questions, just send them in now. I think there's almost an infinite number of ways you could divide up an employee base by all of these intersecting interests. That adding more groups would need to be done thoughtfully and in a way not to overwhelm either the people running them or the people who are being invited to be part of them, because you could spend all your time in employee groups, and that is the thing. It is a commitment for your time alongside the day job, or potentially as it grows, it might become part of your formal objective. So Lauren, Meg, how do you carve out time for making sure that this happens and doesn't get put to one side when you've got other competing priorities?
Do you want to take it or shall I, Meg?
You can take it and I can jump in.
Okay. So we meet weekly. We just have like a little half an hour where we just touch base with each other. We check to see if there's anything that we need to do, if there's anyone new that's joined the business that we need to add to the Ciphr's group and the calendar invite and all those sorts of things. And then because we do a lot of stuff around awareness days as well, we actually spend about an hour directly after the session that we have booked in for each month, where we talk about the following month. So we start to figure out what kind of comms we want to put out there on various different awareness days, because March has been quite an important one for us with International Women's Day, but then it's also been Women's History Month as well. So we've had to sort of go away. We've been sort of doing our own research into sort of various women in history, and then we put all these different communications together that we're sort of slowly putting out there to everyone in Ciphr's over the month. So it sounds like a lot, and to be fair, I mean, Meg, she's amazing. She's our content guru. Like I sort of spout loads of things and she somehow crafts it into something that sounds amazing. So and then with my skills in design work, between the two of us, we do work very well together to create things that are engaging that we can then sort of do throughout the month as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think planning ahead has been a real game changer for us. I think it all became a bit too chaotic when all of a sudden you kind of realize, oh, it's this day today and we should put something out about this, and then you're kind of having to put it together on the spot. Whereas now that we take that active time to plan ahead, I think that has really been beneficial for us. And it also, I think, gives us a bit of our time back. It helps us to kind of designate our Ciphr's time and time to work on this community, and then it makes it more easy to fit it in with everything else that we're doing. Again, and obviously I'm very lucky that I think Lauren and I are very lucky with the worlds that we come from, and we can put our brains together and come up with something great. So yeah, I think we're very lucky in that sense as well, that we kind of work really well as a team and we complement each other with what we can do and our different skill sets, which also helps us kind of do everything in a very kind of timely and efficient way as well.
Absolutely. And with us doing those plans and figuring out what those comms are ahead of time, it gives Amy then time to look at them and make sure that it fits in with the wider internal comms strategy as well. So yeah, definitely doing that work sort of ahead of time really, really does help in so many different avenues.
Fantastic. So we haven't had any further questions come through, so we will wrap up for today. Thanks everyone for sharing your expertise and your insights. We hope all of you attending today has found this useful and informative. If you want to follow up with any of us, you'll find us on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to talk more about it. And if you want more information about any of Ciphr solutions or what we do, you can find us online at ciphr.com, or you can email us at info@ciphr.com. Thanks, Lauren, Meg, Amy. Great to have you with us today. Appreciate all the hard work you put into Ciphr's, not just Ciphr's, but also the presentation for today, and making time in your diary. Thanks, everyone, for being so attentive and engaged. I can see some really positive comments coming in the chat, so thank you very much. I'm glad you find it helpful. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and a good week. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone.